Last week I buried my husband Marcus, and this week I am standing in my nephew's first birthday party, listening to my sister Diana announce that little Nathan is Marcus's son. The words hit me like a slap, but instead of tears I feel something else bubbling up inside me. I almost want to laugh, not because I am losing my mind, but because I know something Diana does not know. Everyone thinks they understand their family completely, until the moment when everything you believed gets turned upside down, and the truth reveals itself in the most unexpected way. Before I share what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you have ever dealt with family drama that left you speechless. And subscribe because this story has a twist you will not see coming. Trust me, what my sister thought was her perfect plan was about to crumble in ways she never imagined. Now let me take you back to where this all started. The rain had been falling steadily during Marcus's funeral 3 days earlier, creating the perfect soundtrack for the worst day of my life. Standing at the graveside surrounded by dozens of people who came to pay their respects, I felt more alone than I ever had before. Marcus and I had been together for 12 years, married for 8 of them, and he was not just my husband, but my best friend, my partner in everything. We met in college when I was 22, and he was 24, both studying business. He taught me how to cook pasta without burning it, and I taught him how to balance a checkbook without getting stressed. Together, we bought our $800,000 house in the suburbs, spent weekends painting walls and planting gardens, dreaming about the life we were building. Marcus worked as a financial advisor, and I ran a small marketing consultancy from our home office. We were that couple that everyone said was meant to be finishing each other's sentences and sharing inside jokes that made other people roll their eyes. The one thing we never managed to do was have children. We tried for years, went through tests, treatments, consultations with specialists who used words like unexplained infertility and keep trying. Eventually, we decided we were complete, as we were just the two of us, and our golden retriever Bailey. Marcus used to joke that we were the cool aunt and uncle to everyone else's kids, and that was enough for us. Diana was the only family I had left after our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. She was 5 years older than me, and had always been my protector growing up. When kids at school made fun of my thick glasses or my hand-me-down clothes, Diana would march right up to them and set them straight. She was fierce loyal, and everything I wished I could be. But something changed after she married Patrick last year. Patrick worked for an insurance company making decent money but nothing spectacular, and I could see the stress it put on Diana. She started making little comments about my life, about how easy I had it with Marcus. "Must be nice to have a husband who spoils you," she would say when I mentioned a weekend trip Marcus and I took. "Some people have all the luck." When we bought new furniture for the living room, Diana made a comment about how some people can just throw money around while others are struggling to pay rent. I always brushed it off, thinking she was just going through a tough time financially and did not mean anything by it. Marcus noticed it too, but never said much, just squeezed my hand whenever Diana made one of her remarks. Then Diana announced she was pregnant about 10 months ago. She was 36 and had been trying for years, so we were thrilled for her. But when people asked about the father, she became evasive. She and Patrick had been having problems, she said, and she did not want to discuss it. Marcus and I organized a beautiful baby shower for her, spending nearly $1,000 on decorations, food, and gifts. We wanted her to feel supported and loved during what seemed like a difficult time. When Nathan was born, something struck me as odd immediately. The baby had the most unusual bright blue eyes, almost turquoise, and fine blonde hair. Diana had always had brown eyes and dark brown hair, and Patrick had hazel eyes and black hair. When Patrick mentioned getting a DNA test just to be sure about paternity for legal reasons, Diana became furious. She said trust was the most important thing in a relationship, and that if he loved her, he would not need proof. Patrick backed down, but I could see the doubt in his eyes every time he looked at the baby. Marcus and I visited often during those first few months. Marcus was great with babies and would spend hours holding Nathan, making funny faces to get him to smile. "Cute kid," Marcus said once, bouncing Nathan on his knee. "Those eyes remind me of someone, but I cannot place who." I thought maybe Nathan looked like some distant relative of Diana's that I had forgotten about. Babies change so much in those early months, and genetics can be unpredictable. But there was something about the way Diana watched Marcus with Nathan that made me uncomfortable, though I could not put my finger on what it was. After Marcus died suddenly of a heart attack at 39, I was drowning in grief and paperwork. The last thing I wanted to do was attend a children's birthday party, but Diana called me every day for a week leading up to Nathan's first birthday. "You have to come," she insisted. "Nathan needs his Aunt Eleanor there. You are the only family he has besides me and Patrick." Her voice had an edge to it that I had not heard before, almost demanding, rather than requesting. I felt guilty for not wanting to go, especially since I had always been close to Diana, so I agreed. I spent an hour that morning picking out the perfect gift for Nathan. I went to an expensive toy store and bought a beautiful set of wooden building blocks made by a local craftsman. The set cost $200, but I wanted to do something special for my nephew's first birthday. Marcus had always been generous with gifts, and I felt like I was honoring his memory by continuing that tradition. As I wrapped the present in bright blue paper with silver ribbons, I felt a little bit of warmth in my chest for the first time since the funeral. Maybe spending time with family was exactly what I needed. But as I drove to Diana's house, that warm feeling began to fade. Something had been bothering me about Diana's behavior over the past few months, especially after Marcus died. She had barely offered any comfort during those dark days, instead asking strange questions about life insurance policies and whether Marcus had updated his will recently. When I told her that Marcus and I had simple wills, leaving everything to each other, she seemed disappointed somehow. "That does not seem fair," she had said. "What about other family members who might need help?" At the time, I thought she was just concerned about my future, but now I wondered if there was something else behind her questions. Diana's house felt cramped and chaotic when I arrived. She and Patrick lived in a small 2-bedroom rental in an older part of town, and with 20 guests crammed into the living room and kitchen, there was barely room to move. The decorations were simple balloons and streamers from the dollar store, which was fine, but such a contrast to the elaborate baby shower Marcus and I had thrown for her. Diana greeted me with a quick hug that felt forced and uncomfortable. "I am so glad you made it," she said, but her eyes were cold, calculating in a way that made my stomach turn. Patrick was quieter than usual, standing in the corner nursing a beer and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Whenever someone tried to engage him in conversation about Nathan, he would give short, uncomfortable answers and then find an excuse to walk away. I tried to approach him once to ask how he was doing, but he mumbled something about needing to check on the food and disappeared into the kitchen. The other guests were mostly neighbors and a few of Diana's co-workers from the dental office where she worked as a receptionist. They seemed like nice enough people, but I felt like an outsider looking in. Nathan was adorable in his tiny blue overalls and matching shirt, crawling around on a blanket surrounded by toys and wrapping paper. But every time I looked at him, those striking blue eyes seemed to stare right through me in a way that made me uncomfortable. Diana kept pointing out how much Nathan had grown, how smart he was, how he was already trying to walk earlier than most babies. "He is going to be tall and strong," she said, watching me carefully. "Just like his father." Something in the way she said it made my skin crawl, but I could not understand why. As the afternoon wore on, I noticed Diana making strange comments to the other guests. She kept talking about Nathan's future, about how important it was for children to have financial security. "Some kids are born lucky," she said loudly enough for me to hear. Some people get everything handed to them while others have to sacrifice for their families. When Mrs. Henderson from next door asked if Patrick was excited about being a father, Diana answered for him. "Nathan's father is very proud," she said, "even though some people do not always acknowledge their responsibilities." Patrick looked mortified and tried to change the subject, but Diana kept making these cryptic remarks. I started feeling increasingly uncomfortable and decided I wanted to leave soon. The grief was still too fresh, and being around all this family happiness was making me feel worse, not better. But when I started gathering my purse and jacket, Diana blocked my path to the door. "You cannot leave yet," she said firmly. "I have something very important to tell everyone, and you especially need to hear this." There was something in her voice that sent a chill down my spine, a hardness that I had never heard before. The other guests started gathering around, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Diana stood up and tapped her wine glass with a fork, calling for everyone's attention. The chatter in the room died down as people turned to face her, probably expecting some sweet speech about Nathan's first year, or thanks to everyone for coming. I was standing near the back of the group, still holding my purse and hoping whatever she had to say would be quick so I could make my escape. But as Diana's eyes found mine across the room, I saw something cold and calculated that made my blood run cold. "I have an announcement to make about Nathan's real father," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room. I felt my heart start to pound as she continued. "This has been weighing on me for months, and I think it is time everyone knew the truth." She paused for dramatic effect, and I could see some of the neighbors exchanging glances, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. Diana pointed directly at me and said the words that I will never forget. "Nathan is Marcus's son. My sister's husband was the father of my baby." The reaction in the room was immediate and devastating. I heard Mrs. Henderson gasp, saw Diana's coworker Sarah cover her mouth with her hand, and felt every pair of eyes in the room turn to stare at me with a mixture of shock and pity. My legs felt weak, and I had to grab the back of a chair to keep from falling over. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and stolen all the air from my lungs. But even as the room spun around me, something deep inside my mind was whispering that this could not be true. Marcus would never have betrayed me like that, especially not with my own sister. Diana was not finished with her performance. "Marcus came to me 6 months after you two stopped trying for children." She continued, her voice getting stronger and more confident. "He told me how much he wanted to be a father, how disappointed he was that Eleanor could not give him what he needed. We never meant for it to happen, but we fell in love, and Nathan is the result of that love." The lies were pouring out of her mouth so smoothly that I almost believed them myself. Several guests were already heading for the door, clearly not wanting to be part of this family drama, but Diana kept talking. "I know this is shocking for everyone, especially for Eleanor, but I cannot keep living this lie anymore. Nathan deserves to know who his real father is, and he deserves his inheritance." That word inheritance hit me like another physical blow. Diana reached into a folder on the coffee table and pulled out an official-looking document. This is Marcus's will, which he had updated 6 months before he died. He left half of his estate to Nathan, including half of the $800,000 house that he and Eleanor shared. I took the document with shaking hands, my vision blurring as I tried to focus on the words. The letterhead looked official, from a law firm I had never heard of, but that sounded legitimate enough. Marcus's signature was at the bottom, and it looked exactly like his handwriting. There was even a notary seal and witness signatures. The document clearly stated that Nathan Williams, son of Diana Williams and Marcus Thompson, was to inherit 50% of all assets, including the family home investment accounts and life insurance proceeds. "I also have other proof," Diana said, producing a manila envelope from the same folder. Inside were photographs of Marcus holding Nathan text messages between phone numbers that could have been Marcus's and Diana's, and even what looked like a receipt for a hotel room in the next town over. The evidence was overwhelming and convincing except for one thing. The more I looked at it, the more something felt fundamentally wrong. Marcus had been many things, but he was not a liar or a cheat. In 12 years together, he had never given me a single reason to doubt his faithfulness. By this point, most of the guests had left mumbling awkward excuses and avoiding eye contact. Patrick was standing in the corner looking absolutely miserable, and I realized he had known about this plan all along. Diana was watching me carefully, probably expecting me to break down in tears or start screaming. Instead, I felt a strange calm washing over me. "Diana," I said quietly, "can we talk privately?" She looked surprised but nodded and led me into the bedroom where Nathan was napping. Once we were alone, I closed the door and turned to face my sister. "I know you are lying," I said simply. "But what I need to understand is why you would do this to me, especially right after I lost my husband." Diana's mask of righteousness began to crack slightly. "You do not know anything," she snapped. "Marcus is gone and you cannot prove that I am lying. I have documentation, witnesses, evidence. You have nothing but your naive belief that your perfect husband could never cheat on you." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Dr. Harrison's number. Dr. Harrison had been our family physician for 8 years and had treated Marcus through several health issues over the years. "I am going to call our doctor and ask him to email me Marcus's complete medical records," I said calmly. "Is there anything you want to tell me before I do that?" Diana's face went completely white. "What are you talking about? Why would you need medical records?" But I could see the panic starting to creep into her eyes. Dr. Harrison answered on the second ring, and I explained that I needed Marcus's medical files sent to my email immediately for legal purposes. He was sympathetic and professional, promising to have his assistant send over the complete records within the next few minutes. Diana was pacing the small bedroom like a caged animal, insisting that medical records could not prove anything about paternity, and that I was just trying to avoid accepting the truth. But I could see sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air conditioning. My phone buzzed with an email notification within 5 minutes. I opened the attachment from Dr. Harrison's office and scrolled through page after page of Marcus's medical history until I found what I was looking for. There it was in black and white, dated from September 2018. After a bicycle accident that summer, Marcus had suffered internal injuries that required surgery. As a complication from that surgery, he had become permanently sterile. The medical report was crystal clear. Patient shows complete absence of viable sperm. Sterility is permanent and irreversible. I turned my phone screen toward Diana and watched her face crumble as she read the words. "This says Marcus was sterile 3 years ago," I said quietly. "Nathan was born 10 months ago, so either you are lying about Marcus being the father or you are claiming my husband could perform miracles." Diana's hands were shaking as she tried to grab the phone from me, but I pulled it back. "That report is fake," she stammered. "Doctors make mistakes all the time. Tests can be wrong." But the fight was going out of her voice, and we both knew it. I walked back into the living room where Patrick was still standing in the corner, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wall. "Patrick," I said loudly enough for him to hear me clearly, "would you like to tell me the truth about Nathan's parentage, or should I call the police and report Diana for fraud and forgery?" Patrick's face went completely pale, and he sank down into the nearest chair. "I told her this would not work," he said miserably. "I told her you would figure it out somehow, but she would not listen. Nathan is my son, Eleanor. Diana and I were together before we got married, but she was not ready to settle down then. When she found out she was pregnant, she panicked and told me she needed time to think. By the time she decided she wanted to try making our relationship work, she was already showing, and people would have done the math and realized we had been together before our wedding. The pieces were finally starting to fall into place. Diana had been ashamed of getting pregnant before marriage, and had created this elaborate fiction to cover up the timeline. But when Marcus died and she saw an opportunity to claim inheritance money, she had taken her lie to a whole new level. "So you forged the will," I said, turning back to Diana. "You created fake text messages and staged those photographs. You made up this entire story about an affair to try to steal my house." Diana finally broke down and started crying, but they were tears of anger and frustration, not remorse. "You have everything," she sobbed. "You always have everything. The perfect marriage, the beautiful house, the financial security. I have nothing but debt and stress and a baby to take care of. I just wanted some of what you have. I just wanted Nathan to have the same advantages you have always had." Her words were like poison, revealing years of resentment and jealousy that I had never fully understood. "So you decided to destroy my memory of my dead husband and steal my home," I said, feeling a cold fury building inside me. "You thought you could take advantage of my grief to commit fraud." I looked at Patrick, who was still sitting with his head in his hands. "Did you help her forge the documents?" He shook his head miserably. "I told her it was a terrible idea, but she said you would never investigate because you trusted family. She said you would just give her what she wanted to avoid conflict." I walked over to where Nathan was playing on his blanket, looking up at me with those beautiful blue eyes that I now realized looked nothing like Marcus at all. Patrick was right about one thing. The eyes were familiar, but they reminded me of Diana's father, our grandfather who had died when we were children. Nathan was an innocent baby caught in the middle of his mother's scheme, and my heart broke for him almost as much as it did for myself. I gathered up all of Diana's fake evidence and put it back in the folder. "I am not going to call the police," I said finally. "But not because I am protecting you, Diana. I am protecting Nathan because he does not deserve to grow up knowing his mother tried to commit fraud for his sake. But I never want to see you again. You are no longer my sister, and you are no longer welcome in my life." Diana started to protest, saying she was still family, and that I could not cut her off completely, but I was already walking toward the door. The months that followed were some of the most difficult of my life, but also some of the most healing. I spent the first few weeks after Diana's betrayal questioning everything I thought I knew about my family, about trust, about the people we choose to keep close to us. The grief of losing Marcus was still overwhelming, but now it was compounded by the grief of losing my sister, the person I had trusted most in the world after my husband. I made the decision to sell the house that Marcus and I had shared. It held too many memories, both beautiful and painful, and I needed a fresh start somewhere new. The real estate market was strong, and I was able to sell for nearly $900,000, giving me the financial freedom to choose my next chapter carefully. I donated Marcus's clothes and personal items to charity, keeping only a few special mementos that would remind me of our happy years together. Patrick called me 2 weeks after the birthday party incident to tell me he was filing for divorce. "I cannot trust her anymore," he said sadly. "If she could lie to you about something this serious, what else might she lie to me about? Nathan deserves better than parents who build their relationship on deception." I felt sorry for Patrick, who seemed like a decent man caught in Diana's web of lies, but I was also relieved that Nathan would at least have one honest parent. I decided to move to California, where I had always wanted to live but never had the courage to try. I found a small apartment in San Diego near the ocean and started over with just my clothes, my laptop, and memories of the man who had loved me faithfully for 12 years. The sound of the waves became my therapy, and I spent hours walking on the beach, thinking about forgiveness, about family, about the difference between the people who are related to us by blood and the people who truly care about our well-being. I started volunteering at a local organization that provided support for widows and widowers, helping people navigate the practical and emotional challenges of losing a spouse. Sharing my story with others who understood the devastating loneliness of grief helped me find purpose again. I learned that I was not the only person who had been betrayed by family during a vulnerable time, and hearing other people's stories of survival and resilience gave me strength to keep moving forward. 6 months later, I received a letter from Diana. She was living in a different state, working as a waitress, and trying to raise Nathan as a single mother. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, claiming she had been desperate and not thinking clearly, begging me to forgive her and allow her back into my life. But as I read her words, I realized that she was still making excuses rather than taking full responsibility for her actions. She was still the same person who had thought it was acceptable to exploit my grief for her own gain. I threw the letter away without responding. Some people believe that forgiveness requires reconciliation, but I learned that I could forgive Diana for my own peace of mind without ever allowing her to hurt me again. Forgiveness does not mean trusting someone who has proven themselves untrustworthy, and protecting yourself from toxic people is not selfishness. It is wisdom. A year later, I met Jennifer, another widow in her 30s, who had lost her husband in a car accident. We became close friends, bonding over our shared experiences of loss and renewal. Jennifer introduced me to her brother Michael, and slowly, carefully, I began to open my heart to the possibility of love again. Michael was patient and kind, understanding that I would always love Marcus, and that any new relationship would not erase that history, but would instead build something different and beautiful alongside it. I learned that family is not just about the people you share DNA with, but about the people who show up for you during the worst moments of your life and celebrate with you during the best ones. Marcus had been my family for 12 years, and now I was building a new family with people who had earned my trust through their actions rather than their bloodline. I learned that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary for survival and growth. Sometimes people ask me if I regret cutting Diana out of my life completely, if I ever wonder about Nathan, or feel guilty about not being part of his childhood. The truth is that I feel sad for the relationship we could have had if she had been the sister I thought she was, but I do not regret protecting myself from someone who proved she was willing to cause me tremendous pain for her own benefit. Nathan has Patrick, and whatever new family structure they create, and I hope he grows up to be a better person than his mother. On quiet evenings in my San Diego apartment watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, I sometimes think about that terrible afternoon at the birthday party when my whole world shifted again, just weeks after losing my husband. I think about how easy it would have been to believe Diana's lies if I had not known Marcus as well as I did, if I had not trusted my own instincts about the man I had loved for 12 years. The experience taught me that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, but truth always finds a way to surface if you are brave enough to look for it. It taught me that family means something only if it includes loyalty, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. And it taught me that sometimes the family you choose is stronger and more reliable than the family you are born with. Today, I am building a new life based on authentic relationships with people who have proven their character through their actions. I am learning to trust again, to love again, but with the wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal and choosing to move forward rather than stay trapped in bitterness. Most importantly, I learned that no matter how dark things seem, there is always the possibility of starting over, of finding peace, and of creating the life you truly deserve. The truth is that Diana thought she could take advantage of my grief to steal my future, but instead she freed me from a toxic relationship I never recognized and pushed me toward a life that is more authentic and fulfilling than anything I could have imagined. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best decision you ever make. What would you have done if your own sister tried to steal your inheritance through such an elaborate lie? Have you ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life for your own well-being? Let me know in the comments because I read every single one and your stories help other people feel less alone. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear about choosing their own peace over toxic family loyalty. And make sure to subscribe, because I share real stories about surviving life's most difficult challenges and finding strength you never knew you had. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself from people who would harm you even if they share your blood. I wish you courage, peace, and the wisdom to recognize the difference between the people who truly love you and the people who only want what you have.